How we doing? I know we're getting to the end of today, but y'all have been here looking good. Frank took my job because he was introducing the last panel, but I'm back. We have two more panels before we close out today, and I know a lot of us are very informed, and we've been paying attention to the evil that has been happening in Washington, D.C. today. And so these next two panels are going to tie in everything that is happening politically, but also a lot of the things that you heard about today on this stage. So I would like us to talk about the false narrative that business and labor cannot coexist. We actually need them both. And there's no one better to have this conversation with our fearless leader, Alphonso David, than the one and only April Verrett, who is the international president of SEIU and the first Black woman to do so. So give it up for April and Alphonso.
What up?
How you doing?
I'm good.
Yeah?
I am. How are you?
I'm good.
Good.
I think at this moment, a lot of people are processing what is happening in this country, and today was a major vote in Washington, as we all know. There will be collateral consequences as a result of this legislation. But before we get into the details of that, you are one of the most powerful women in this country.
That's what y'all be telling me.
Tell you, because we need to keep you there. You run one of the largest unions in the United States. You represent thousands and thousands and thousands of people. What I want to start with, because we are at a business summit, and when we talked about the importance of this conversation, I said to you, let's start with the misperception that people have about labor leaders, and whether there can be or should be a relationship between labor and business. You have the floor.
There must be a relationship between business and labor. There absolutely must be. I fully, wholeheartedly believe that we get the results, the legislative results we got today, when business and labor are pitted against one another. When we allow forces that don't see the value in most of us, that want power and wealth concentrated with a very, very small group of people, you get the erosion of our democracy, of our rights, more economic inequality than we've ever seen. You get what we got today, which is the destruction of a healthcare system, not just for the 18 million people that'll lose their insurance because of the cuts, or just the 5 million children that'll go hungry because of the cuts, but a sweeping piece of legislation that will see premium increases for every single person in this room, that will see every single municipal and state and county budget in this country impacted because of the cuts that they had today. I don't think that's American. I don't think that's democratic. I don't think it's good business.
But fine. So let's just assume we accept that narrative, we accept that argument. I'm a business leader watching on LinkedIn right now, or I'm watching on YouTube, and I am able to control my company. And when you talk to me about collective bargaining, and you talk to me about unionization, what does that say to me in terms of power, in terms of control? And why should I accept or embrace or participate with a group of people who want to unionize, when in fact I'm going to lose control of my company? So help explain to a business leader who may be terrified about the idea of collective bargaining why there is benefit to management as well as labor.
I am pro-worker for sure, but I am not anti-business. I am not anti-profit. I am pro-shared prosperity. a share in the prosperity that workers help create. I don't think that's too much for anyone to ask for. And yeah, it is about sharing power, but it's sharing power to increase the bottom line so that everyone can have a greater share of it. Data shows that when workers have a seat at the table, they can help businesses perform better. They can increase the bottom line. And I think that when you have a workforce that you invest in, that you share a good piece of the pie with, everybody is happier, right? And happier, more fulfilled workers, more sustained workers who want to stick around, that's just good business. That's better for everyone. So yeah, we may have to share a little bit of power, but it's sharing power for the greater good.
And so this is not just for large companies. Let's talk about entrepreneurs. You have venture capitalists here. You have investors. You have founders. You have folks that are thinking about creating their own businesses. And when you think about creating a business, of course, when you get a 50 employees or 100 employees or maybe 200 employees, maybe unionization becomes an issue. Talk about the benefits that labor brings, not only for large businesses, but also for small businesses.
So your words, not mine. I'm one of the most powerful women in the country. And so when you have relationship with organizations like mine, you have access to power. You have access to the relationships that I have. And so when I go to a governor's office, not the Oval Office so much anymore, but we can go together. Right? When I sit down at the Democracy Alliance or I'm on the board or other places where there's access to capital, we go together, right? And so this is about not just sharing power, but sharing relationship.
Okay, fine. Okay, we can share relationships, but when you get into that negotiating room, how do you make sure that the interests are aligned? Because if my interests are about generating as much revenue as possible, pushing innovation as much as possible, is that your interest as well, or is it different?
My interest is in workers living better. My interest is in increasing, is ending poverty wages, right? This isn't about conflict, this is about correction. This is about correcting the largest wealth gap that we've seen, and not just the wealth of poor people and middle class people. I'm talking about the wealth gap of the oligarchs and the wealthiest from the rest of us. It's out of control. And so how are we creating more wealth in ending poverty wages? And I think that's possible if businesses, if entrepreneurs have different relationships with workers. Right? How do we see ourselves about who are we really aligned with, right? Because we're not aligned with them. We are aligned with one another. And that's the myth that we have to dispel. And when we work together, it's about us really getting our shared piece of the pie from the wealth that's concentrated in the hands of far too few.
What does that look like to you? What does real equity look like to you?
I think real equity begins when a home care worker who today in this state makes probably $7.50, $8 an hour can see what is the fastest growing job in this country, right? A few panels ago, we talked about how we're going to have a crisis in the healthcare workforce. The fastest growing job in this country is a home care worker, someone who's going to take care of seniors and people with disabilities. We're going to need tens of millions more of them in the next 10 years. Tens of millions of more jobs that are today poverty wage jobs. Imagine if those tens of millions of jobs are family sustaining jobs, where that single mom or single dad can own a home, can send their children to college, can invest in the stock market. You begin to change community. We begin to change what the outcomes are like for those children. That's real equity, right? Taking people that are today living and working in poverty and creating a new middle class that is centered on us, the way we did with public sector jobs in the 50s and 60s, right? What's the next way we build wealth in our community?
What do you say to folks who say, I appreciate, April, that you are running a labor organization, but I'm focused on racial justice. I'm focused on achieving equality for people of color. And you are a labor organizer, you're a labor leader, but there is a difference between racial justice and the work in the labor movement. What do you say to people who think or approach this question in that way?
Well, do you see me?
You're the first, right? To be fair, you're the first woman of color to run the SEIU.
I am, and the real flex is going to be making sure I'm not the last. But the reality is, I'm sorry, I got caught up in my own damn head.
We'll start again. April Verrett is one of the most powerful, is not the most powerful labor leader in the United States. Come on. Okay. So what do you say to someone who's watching and say, look, I understand that. No one in my family has ever worked for a union. I do know about the fact that I'm making X amount of dollars a year, and I'm focused on racial justice. This is not about labor or non-labor. This is about racial justice. What's the case for someone who may not necessarily be that supportive or informed about the labor movement and why it's important to racial justice?
So I'm a black woman, right? And first, I'm a labor leader second. I am a power builder first.
Powerful woman.
I'm a powerful woman that is about building power for others. But the reality is that racial justice and economic justice are inextricably linked. We are in the heart of the American South. I've been here since Sunday because we brought 600 of our members from across the country to do a tour here in Louisiana of the heart of the ICE detention infrastructure. It's here in the state of Louisiana, 8 facilities. And you can't miss that the very same place, part of the country that is bred with the blood of our ancestors, is where the most dangerous, destructive, evil is being played out in our country, the ripping apart of families. And so it is a through line from the time that our ancestors was brought to these shores to the shit show, in Washington, D.C. today. And it is economic exploitation built on a fallacy of white supremacy and anti-blackness. It is the very same evil, it is the very same corporate greed, it is the very same systemic poverty, systemic and structural racism that existed in 1619 that exists today. And so my job as a labor leader is to call that out and to get all of us to do something about it.
Okay. I see you. Let's talk a little bit about the informal economy, what they call the gig economy. There are hundreds of thousands of people, millions of people, if you will, because the data isn't, we're not quite sure, but who are not working for an employer. They are not what we call a W-2 employee. They are a 1099, a contractor, if you will. What is labor's role in supporting the gig economy? Do you see labor being in that space, and how?
Labor is in that space. Today we have campaigns in Massachusetts, Illinois, California, Minnesota to organize rideshare drivers. It is labor's role to stop telling workers what's best for them and to listen to workers tell us what they want. And workers are telling us that I don't want to work like my mama and my daddy worked. I don't want to work like my grandparents work. I'm not going to go get a job at 18 and stay there until I retire at 65. And part of that is that I don't want to be a W-2 employee. I want to have agency. I want to make my own choices. But they deserve a union too. And so we have to change inside of the House of Labor to accommodate today's workers and future workers about what they want. And so I like to say I'm about building a younger, darker, hipper, fresher, swaggier labor movement that is built and designed for 21st and 22nd century workers in a 21st and 22nd century economy.
What do you see? Yes. What do you see as your biggest challenge right now, in this moment, running SEIU? What is your biggest challenge?
There's a lot of them, but what I want this audience to hear is that our biggest challenge is not seeing our worth and the worth of those around us. When my union started the Fight for 15, centered around fast food workers, people that look like us were saying, well, you don't deserve $15 an hour for flipping a burger. Well, why not? When corporations are making billions of dollars off those burger flippers, and folks are flipping burgers for these wealthy corporations trying to raise their families, why don't they deserve $15 an hour, and who are we to tell them what their worth and dignity is? And so let us see the value and the dignity that exists in each and every one of us, and hold together that all work has dignity and should be rewarded and valued.
What do you see as the greatest opportunity in this role, in this moment? A lot of people are confused, disoriented, concerned about what the future looks like. And as you may have heard us talk about this morning, the Global Black Economic Forum is really about reimagining what a future could look like that's prosperous, that's inclusive. What do you see as, in your seat that you sit in, what do you see as the greatest opportunity that we're not seeing? Where is the white space that we're missing?
Yeah, look, what is being played out today and has been since November is really shameful, and it's scary. And it's someone said it is this distractions that is not letting us see the destruction. But I'm in awe, quite frankly, because they've had a strategy, they've rolled it out, and they've just relentless and ruthless. So it showed me that we too can be relentless and ruthless, not for chaos and destruction, but for good, and that's centered on love and it's centered on justice. And so I think there is a space to come into the space just like they have and blow some stuff up, because it don't work any damn way. So I'm all about blowing it up and putting it back together, and if I can paraphrase Langston Hughes, to create the America that has never been but yet must be. Right? And so I think we have an opportunity to together build a vision for the future that we really want, that centers those who have been the furthest away from the center of concern, those of us without power. Like, how do we center us and make sure the future is one where we can all thrive and have some joy, right? Have some joy.
Now, you have been in the labor movement for a long time. You've had the opportunity to interface with people in so many different sectors. What has been the most powerful message that you've received from a SEIU member that a business leader should hear? Because I think all too often, I've run large companies, I've been in the not-for-profit space, I've been in government, and you are having those direct conversations with people about being a part of a construct, being a part of an institution, being a part of a family. And sometimes those messages are disconnected from the people that are running the companies. So are there messages that you think are important for business leaders to hear that have shown up on your desk?
Yeah. I think about the nursing home worker. Again, nursing home, like elder care, those spaces are booming. Venture capitalists are all over them, right? Because they know that that's where the money is. But I think about folks who, like Miss Edna in Chicago, where I'm from, who worked at a nursing home facility on the north side of Chicago for over 50 years. And she would talk about caring for people and what she no longer had the time to do, and how worse the outcomes were for those residents than they were 50 years ago, when she had the time to hold a hand or to make sure someone was fed. And I think about how better not just the care would be, but the outcomes would be, and the business would be, if the folks just took the time to talk to the folks doing the work. And that is the value in workers. And the people with the real experience, they get overlooked, right? This woman who didn't have a high school education wasn't seen as someone who can make someone's business run better. And so I think taking the time to actually listen to workers and what they know to be true.
What if I'm sitting at my desk and I'm saying, April, I appreciate that, but most of these jobs are going to be gone in 10 years. Artificial intelligence is going to do away with the labor force as we know it. Why should I think about investing and supporting labor when labor as we know it today will be very different in 2 years, in 5 years, in 10 years? What's your message to them?
Well, people are people, and we gonna be somewhere, right? I often think about that, like when generative AI and these humanoids and robots and all of this come allegedly to take over. Where are the people gonna be? We're still going to be somewhere. We are still going to need food and shelter and connection. And so humans, let's not forget about humankind. And let humankind, let people, let workers be a part of the conversation about innovation and technology. Because hell, they want their jobs to be easier. They can say, hey, I can see how these tools can help me. But let's not leave people behind and out of the conversation, because people are still going to be here.
And we're about to close. I want to give you a few minutes to talk about the bill that just passed and what you envision doing moving forward as a labor leader. What is the path forward look like? What we pride ourselves at the Global Black Economic Forum is to really think about solutions. We can talk about all of the problems that we confront, but what are the solutions? What are the pathways to creating a new paradigm? So as you may not have had enough time, I know the bill just passed about an hour and a half ago, to think about what do you think that new pathway is? Because this is now going to be a piece of legislation that will become law. And we will have to think about how to interface with it, how to modify our practices with it. What does that look like for you?
So I haven't had a lot of time to process, and there are two things that come immediately to mind. What happens in states, and how do we work with states and with entities in states, not just state government, but civil society, to on a state level try to figure out how we mitigate harm. How do we hold our people together? How do we make sure community still has resources to survive over the next however many years until we can right this wrong? So that's number one. And number two, there has to be consequences. Elections have consequences, but bad votes have to have consequences. And so I don't want to get too political, but we have to not let people forget today and draw the connection between today, what happened today to the outcomes that are surely going to come in our communities and how we choose to take action come 2026.
So April, I want to just end on the global piece, because you are the head of the Service Employees International Union. Talk to us a little bit about the work that you're doing globally and how it distinguishes or is different from the work that you're doing in the United States.
Well, first of all, our Canadian leaders and members are like, y'all really crazy down there. But I've been invited to go to Ghana later this year, and hopefully I can still travel there, because y'all, they crazy. But this is it's a movement. So some of you may have heard, but one of our local leaders, David Huerta, who's the president of a local in California, was arrested for exercising his First Amendment rights just a couple of weeks ago. We got over 150 unions across the globe to show support about David Huerta. The world is watching. what is happening in this country. And there are folks who want to partner with us and be real allies, both on the continent, in the Caribbean, in Central and South America, people who look like us, who want to help American workers build power to withstand this moment. And I am incredibly energized by that, because the African diaspora, as we've just heard, is rich and is powerful, and we need not forget we are not on this planet alone.
April Verrett, President of the Service Employee International Union, thank you for what you do. Thank you for your advocacy. And thank you for being one of the most powerful women in the United States and on the planet.
Thank you, my friend.